Welcome to the Starter Girls podcast, the show dedicated to the Starter Girl. She's an achiever, she's a creator, she's a magic maker, she's a dreamer, and she is doing all the things. I'm your host, Jennifer Loading, and welcome to this episode. All right, here we are. Welcome to another episode of the Starter Girls. I'm your host, Jennifer Loading. I'm so excited about my guest today. She is amazing, Tammy Cohen. She is the author of Text Messages to My Son, Connecting Deeply in a World of Devices. I'm so excited to get her on here today. And as you guys know, one of the great things about Starter Girls, we are all about empowering the female entrepreneur, creator, leader, wherever you are in your journey right now, and how we can do that, both through our relationships, through our financial, through our vocation, and through our health and well-being. And so Tammy brings a wealth of knowledge. I'm so excited. She's a connector. She does a lot of amazing work where she is from. And so we're going to welcome her on here. So Tammy, welcome to Starter Girls Podcast. So excited to have you here today.
Hey, Jennifer, thank you so much for having me on. I'm tremendously excited to be here today.
And this is going to be so much fun because the first time we met, we only got to talk for a very, very short time, but I knew instantly that I liked your energy. I can tell that you are a people person and you value relationships. And I think that's so important in what we do, whether, it's in our careers or whether it's in our homes. And I think one of the great things about what you've got going on, I'm going to want you to tell us about this book and how it came about. But I think this is a really big area for a lot of us, moms out there that are trying to run our businesses and how do we run our homes effectively as well. So I want to start right there. I want to talk a little bit about your latest book that you brought out and the inspiration behind that.
Well, Text Messages to My Son, Connecting Deeply in a World of Devices became the book, but it didn't start that way. It was just, I had no intention of writing a book, actually, when I started this. Over the pandemic, I realized we had time, we were all shut down. And for me, it was a time of personal development and growth. I have to say it was a challenging time, but it gave me the time to actually not be traveling for work and to actually look at myself. And I realized there was a lot of things that I needed to work on and take accountability for. And that I wasn't a happy person. And I had a lot of limiting beliefs and all kinds of things in my origin story that I realized were affecting me even now, even to this point in my life. So I started doing a lot of coursework and workshops and reading a lot and getting really into the whole mindset space. I hired a coach, a couple of coaches. I really was there. And I decided that I really wanted to change the relationship that I was currently having with my kids, because in the past, it was always, I was busy. And every message, every text I ever sent them, because that's the best way to communicate, they didn't want to talk to me in person, was sending them a message that was either a reprimand, a command, or some kind of, ask or a question or something or a reminder. There was no communication otherwise. And half the time they didn't answer. Sometimes they'd answer with a three-letter acronym that I had no idea what it was. I had no idea what it was. So I said, you know what? I want to change it. I want to just send them messages of love, inspiration. I want to share what I'm learning, but I also want to own up to things that I haven't done right by them. I want to be real. I want to be a human being to them. I want to change that dynamic. So I started doing that every day. It was really consistent. I'm still doing it. It has never changed, even though the book came out. So after 2 years of daily messages, I had a lot of material. But what really got me to write the book is that as I was sharing it with people I know and other parents and friends and family and colleagues, they were like, wow, that's really amazing. You should put that in a book. So I said, okay. And then the next chapter started with actually getting a book and doing all this, because I didn't know how to do it, and publishing and getting to that place. So yeah, it's been a journey and a half, but I really just did it to improve my relationship with them, to connect with them in a way that they want to connect. Jennifer, we have these devices. They're neither good nor evil. They're just there. It's the content, right, that we're sharing. That's whether it's good or bad. And we have to reach people on where they're at. People aren't having conversations. You got to find another way to talk to them. And that's just how it is today.
Yeah. And I'm listening to you and, of course, this is how this goes. And I know you're a podcaster, so you get it. So as your people are talking, you're like thinking about all the things they're saying to you. And right now there's like so many takeaways, I think, from this, and we can dive into some of these, but I think, starting with the going back to the pandemic and when you had this time, that everything was shut down and we all, sort of came into a place where we were like, what do we do here? Right? Like, what do we do? We got to pivot. And I think that some of us evolved and kept growing. Some people shut down, and whether you were in business or not, but I think even as people, we have to evolve. Right. And so I love that you talk about you took that time to work on you. And I think that, I share that with you too, because I think a lot of us did that. We realized we were in this crisis and it's like, what are we going to do with ourselves? Are we going to sit in this and be sick about it? Or are we going to evolve as a human being? Right. And I think that is awesome in itself, is that you took, the initiative to do that. But then I also love to jump into this part about where you're talking about where you met your sons where they are. And I think that is so important in everything that we do, whether it's in our relationships at home or whether we're dealing with people in our careers, right? Because we've got these generation gaps and everybody's kind of on these different, where you and I may be still kind of old school in the way we do our connecting, right? Like I'm okay picking up a phone occasionally. I don't really, I do texting sometimes because I think it's easy. I don't understand all these emojis that they do. My kids, I was laughing when you said that because my kids do the same thing. Everything's like short abbreviated words and pictures and emojis. And I'm like, do I just start sending emojis back to them? And maybe you could talk to us about that. Is that what I'm doing? I need to send emojis back, So I think there's something to be said about this whole really meeting people where they are and trying to find that common ground, unless you just decide, hey, I'm not going to connect, right? Like I'm just not going to.
Right.
And that's why this is important.
Well, that's a really, really good point, Jennifer. So basically, for me, I read a very interesting fact when I was going through all these studies and everything, that in 2017, people reported they were on their phone 70% of the time. And by 2022, it was continuously. They didn't even say 100% of the time. They said continuously. So I even know, and as a grown up, somebody who works and has businesses and stuff, I'm looking at my phone all the time. I own a restaurant with my husband on the Upper East Side. People sitting at the table, and you've been in restaurants before, they're not even talking to each other. They're looking, everybody's looking at their phone. Very funny thing. I remember really being impacted on this. I was watching a basketball game with my husband over the pandemic, and these girls were like, they didn't even know they were on the big that jumbotron where they have your pictures up there, because they were all looking at their phones and taking selfies during, like, and even the announcers were like, can you believe this? These girls have no idea they're on the jumbotron. They don't know what's going on because they're not watching. They're not even involved with the game. They're looking at themselves and taking selfies. So people are really, I don't know if it's hypnotic or what, but they're getting all of their research, all of their information is coming to them through a device. And this has been going on for a while, whether you're making a purchase, anything you're doing, you might go to a brick and mortar, but you're doing all your research online. You're getting every piece of information. So that's when I decided, yeah, I need to use this device instead of having it use me. Like I need to find a way to talk to them through it. And that's exactly what I did. And it's interesting because you're right. Like our generation, we spoke. I mean, I didn't listen. There was no internet when I was growing up. There wasn't even cell phone. Until I was a grown up, there were no cell phones. Okay, so we had to find a way to connect with each other. And now it's just in a whole other place. But it doesn't mean that you don't do it because it's not what you did. I noticed over the pandemic how many older people had never been online before, and they were online. They were ordering online. They got it because you have to evolve and you have to reach your kids where they are, or else you're always going to have that kind of distant thing. If they know you love them, and I know they love me, but there's more to a communication, just the knowing, right? There's more to a relationship, just knowing that somebody loves you. It's great, but there's the daily, there's the back and forth, and there's, you know what? I really believe that if you receive a message every day from somebody there's no ulterior motive in the message. Okay, it's just, I love you, and here's something I think is really interesting. What do you think? Here's an inspirational quote. I hope you have a beautiful day. It warms the soul. And that person who's receiving it actually becomes bulletproof to anything going on in the day, because they know not only that they're loved, but like somebody took the time to care, to send them a beautiful word, to send them something meaningful, and it warms your heart after a while. It does, and it has an effect. And let me tell you something. One thing that's going to happen is the day those messages don't come, they're going to miss it. And what are they going to remember? Is my mother, my best friend, my whoever it was, took the time to communicate to me, took the time. And that's
Yeah.
what they're hopefully going to do with their kids or with their friends or with their community, pass it on, pass it on.
Yeah. That's so great. I was getting chills listening to you. You were warming my heart.
Thank
So
you.
great. No, and I think this is so important because I think that so often we get in these complacent stages. And I think sometimes, I mean, I feel like part of growth, a growth journey is finding the middle ground, right? It's like not saying my way is the right way, your way is the right way. We all believe our ways are the right way. And if they've grown up, funny enough, I'm going to let me pull off of this for a second. But funny enough, my husband and I were talking just this morning when we were getting ready to walk. I said, I was telling about some video I saw on TikTok, and I send my kids videos of animals. That's what we do. We pass animal videos back and forth because we
Love
like
it.
animals. It's so funny. But I told him this morning, I'm like, we were probably like the last generation that got out of school without internet. Like we didn't have cell phones and internet and all of that stuff. Like I didn't even have a computer when I was in college. Like I did all my work on a memory writer typewriter with a screen about that big. And when I saw
Me
computers,
too. Oh, wow.
yeah, I
Yeah.
was like, oh my gosh. My mom did have the big apples when they first came out, but none of us could afford that stuff in college. I mean, you didn't have that. And so when I finally got to a computer, I was so excited. But these kids now have that's what they've grown up in. And for us to just say, I'm not going to learn any of this, like how to communicate with them, just completely shut down and say, I'm not going to because this is the way I've always done it, is really not evolving, right? So that's why I agree with you that we have to find this middle ground. And just to say that, I don't know how to do this because this is the way they communicate, and not try to solve that problem is not going to benefit anybody in the end. So I love what you're doing, and I think it makes perfect sense.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I just realized that it's just simpler, to send a text.
Yeah.
Jennifer, it's like it comes to me the message. It takes a couple of minutes. We have 24 hours in a day, so you're sleeping at least 8. Let's say you're sleeping. You're lucky you're sleeping 7 or 8 hours a night, and then you have the rest of the
What's
day.
that?
Yeah, right. Because who sleeps anyway? Get you get rid of, like, you have you eat, you work, whatever. You have a couple of minutes to send a text. It's actually very easy and very rewarding. And I keep the emojis like down. In the book, first of all, what's really interesting about text messages to my son's book, it's the first book ever written completely in text format. Very easy to read because it's in text. So it's not continuous content, it's text. And the only emojis we use in the book are every text starts with "Good morning, sunshine," because that was a song, "You Are My Sunshine." Right? When they were little, I used to sing that. So I do "Good morning" and the sunshine emoji. And at the end of each message, I tell them like what they mean to me, like how much I love them, or I've loved them through lifetimes, and I'll always love them. So that's where there are heart emojis at the end. That's it. The rest of it is just text. And it's the first book written in text format where people are telling me like, it's so easy to read. It's so quick and easy, and I'm getting this inspiration, and it's really simple. Plus, there's 10 chapters. So we have like mindfulness and gratitude, leadership and focus. So what happens is all the messages that align with the chapter title are in there. So you don't have to read it continuously straight through. You can jump chapters. You're not you're not messing up the story. You're not missing details because it's not written that way. And at the end of every chapter, we have lines. It's like, your turn with the finger emoji, try a message. So you can take pieces of the messages, just try it. Try it once. Send out a message. You know what? Your kids might say, I'm not into this. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. They're into it or not. You just send them the message, even if it's like, I love you and you're the best. It doesn't matter. But over time, they're going to really like that message. And you'll see, you'll just play it by ear, but it has to be consistent. So in other words, here and there is not going to make a difference. But if you every day say, I'm going to send them a message, whether it's the morning or the afternoon or the evening, just get it out there. So that's like, what I feel has been successful to me. And I've had other parents tell me they started doing it and that they do see there is like a difference. They feel there's a difference in the way that their child is relating to them, because it's not always do this, do that. What do you want? Don't ask me for money. It's always It's not
Right.
that. And I did a lot of that. I got news for you. Okay. So it's
Yeah.
not that.
Well, and it's funny that you say that too, because I always feel like, when my son texts me, I'm like, what is he, what's going on?
What does
Like,
he
what's
want?
happening
What does
right
he
now?
want?
Right.
Yeah.
That's what's going through your mind. Like, what's happening, and then every once in a
Uh-huh.
while I'll get a I love you. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's a different text, but I like this. And you know what I think is so, I guess, connecting the dots here, because you mentioned earlier that they feel like they're feeling better, right? So I think it gets into this whole idea of a non-consumer relationship, right? Like an unconditional type love, where now you're just sending this out with any regard for like a condition. It's just you're putting the message out there. But I think what's also neat about this is, now you obviously aren't going to send these same kind of messages to other people, but you can also treat other people in your life in this same manner. Maybe you don't have to text them every single day, but if you transfer this into relational building, even with the people that you work with on your teams and your coworkers and your friends and stuff, the difference it can make in the relationships, right? When you are coming from a
Absolutely.
place of
100%.
gratitude and thankfulness, and all of those happy places.
Imagine if you're like growing up and you're receiving beautiful messages, not just from your parents, but from friends, community, extended family. I mean, if you were living in that world, you would grow up in a completely different mindset. You wouldn't even be subjected, you wouldn't even hate violence, indoctrination, incitement. It wouldn't even touch you because
Right.
you heard different messages your whole life. And I think that's really important. And I want to say that my kids respond. They respond. They send me back heart emoji. They send me back I love you. They send me back good message. They respond. I don't expect them to respond. Some
Right.
days they don't respond if they're particularly busy, but they do respond. And what really meant a lot to me is they were involved with this book. They wrote the foreword. They wanted people to know what it meant to them to get these messages. And they're like any other guys growing up. They live downtown. I live in Manhattan. They have careers. They're busy. They grew up in the city. It's not like, well, what kind of kid is this, likes these kind of messages? No, they're just regular guys. And they're 30 and 28 and 23 now. It's not like they're little kids. But they were involved. They helped with the design of the book. I asked them questions every step of the way. I wanted their input, and they were just so astounded that their mom was actually going to publish a book. They were proud of me. So they wrote the foreword. They answer. Sometimes we get together Friday nights for dinner, for Shabbat dinner. We're Jewish, so we do that. And the kids are like, they'll sometimes talk about the messages, and they'll be like, "Your messages are really long," and I'm like, I know. I get really carried away with the topic, like that I want to share. And they're like, yeah, but you know what? They're well written. So I'm like, do you read them or you just send an emoji back
Yeah,
really
they're
quickly?
paying attention.
They go, we read it, and I was like,
Yeah.
okay, good,
Yeah, and I
So
think,
that's
like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, that's basically like it's just become this thing that we do. It's just the
Yeah,
thing we're doing with each other, and it's just easy. It's become very easy.
I love it. No, I think it's awesome. I am thinking on so many, things here about, like, just how we treat people, in our lives, the relationships that we have, because it's not just about our kids, it's everybody that's in our lives and how we treat them, because we get so comfortable in our states that we forget that we're still human beings, right? And you're right. And I think with kids, we do get to that place sometimes where the only time we're texting is, hey, did you do this, did you do that? And like you, it's interesting, because a lot of times I joke about this. I say, it's hard for me to ask, my two girls are moved out now. They're out of the house, but my youngest is still at home. And I say, sometimes it's difficult to ask him in person, but I know that if I send a text, I can get the
Right,
answer, right? Because now I'm not
right.
bothering, because it's coming through in the text. Now it may be the same question I'm going to ask him if I were face to face, but somehow I'm bugging him when I do that versus if I put it in the text. So I think there's a lot of takeaways in this, but I think the big message here is how to connect relationally with people and finding that way to connect.
100%. What's really interesting too is since I started doing this with my sons, I actually rethink messages that I send to colleagues, that I send to community and friends. Sometimes, tone. Okay, sometimes you have to be very careful with the tone in a message in an email because you can't tell how it's
Right.
meant. And I'll reread the text and I'll add something really nice in there. I mean, because I want them to understand that it's um, that it's a good message. It's not meant, there's no tone there. I'm not being snarky. I'm not being this. I'll send a heart. I'll add something. I might send a comment, like especially with business, or I might send a message that something has to be done a certain way because we have teams and things like that. And we work with other people, but I'll always make sure that I add something warm, that they know it's meant with love. It's not meant in a way to put them down or make them feel like they're doing something wrong, or so I that's been the effect of doing this, because like I said, when I was messaging my kids, it wasn't about them, it was about me being a better person. And I
Yeah.
realized it rubbed off on the messages that I'm sending to everybody else. People have told me, who know me a long time, they're like, you're changed. You're not as aggressive or defensive, or like you seem so much chiller. And I'm like, yeah, I think there's something permeating from doing all this
Yeah.
text message. It's an effect. Yeah, over
Yeah, no,
time.
and that's good. And to your point on that, it's interesting because I probably shared this with you. I was in Mary Kay for 22 years. And so one of the things we learned in leadership was how to layer negativity, sandwich it between layers of praise. And so interestingly enough, I didn't grow up learning that. I don't know that unless you had family that knew that. We didn't. When we heard something bad, we heard something bad. And that's the way it was. And you're probably similar to me in that I'm just pretty practical and I just say what I got to say. And so Mary Kay was a huge learning thing for me because I was working with women a lot and I wasn't always so nice and politically correct in my languaging and all of those things. I would just say what came to mind. And so it's funny because I've learned over the years in doing that every time I've ever had to deliver something negative to a customer or to a colleague, that I always try to praise them in some way. And so funny enough, just last week, I'll give you a good example for our listeners, how this, and a perfect example of what we're talking about right now. I had to terminate something I signed up for. And I realized after I signed up, because I did it late, and it's something on my website. It's something stupid. It's just like a privacy policy thing I'm trying to put on my website. But after I started looking at the site, I just didn't really like it. It was too busy for me. It was too much. And so I wrote the people and I basically said, I'd like to cancel this. It's too much for me. I think you guys are doing a great job, but it's not for me. And it was awesome because when they wrote me back, they were just not confrontational at all. They wrote me back,
Right.
said, thanks for the feedback. We appreciate you taking the time looking at it. I'm sorry that it wasn't for you. We'll give you a refund. It can make such a difference in how you get somebody to respond to you. And that goes to your kids too. If you want them to do something, it can make such a difference in how they respond, when you are mindful of your tone and how you're communicating. So I think there's just so many messages in this whole thing about how we communicate with other people.
Yeah, I mean, basically, we're humans. You know, we have a voice. I mean, we're created that way, right? We have the thumb, the brain, that we can
Yep.
speak, we have voice, and it's really all about communication. I think when people stop communicating, when it gets to nasty communications, listen, we didn't all grow up, we come from different generation. Our parents didn't know. Like, we're much more like enlightened in a lot of ways. We're learning certain things we shouldn't have done, or certain things that we took from growing up. But if you go back to generations, they didn't have this kind of luxury. They lived differently. And I remember growing up, I walked on eggshells a lot. I didn't like, I was always, there was a lot of anger. There was a lot of there was some trauma. There were things. And you take it upon yourself as a kid because you don't know. You don't
Right.
know. Your subconscious trying to keep you like alive. And you're just kind of like, I shouldn't do that. I shouldn't do this because when I do, this happens and it's my fault. So that's like a chain that's been going on for a long time. We have a lot of these origin stories and culture, everything plays into it. But it was, we develop these things to stay alive because we don't want the tribe throwing us out. The tribe throws you out when you're a child, you're dead. I mean, what's going to
Right.
happen to you, right? So the thing that I had to realize was that it's affecting me, and it's not necessarily what I'm repeating, things that I might even be aware I'm repeating. So I saw it and I started becoming more aware of it. And I realized that, yeah, it's up to me to communicate and open up for something better. It's not up to your kids.
Right.
It's up to them to do it for their kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the
I
way,
agree.
Yeah, so
Right.
that's what I realized. And also to let go. I mean, I had to let go also of a lot of things growing up too. But, my parents have passed on. So it's like I had to let go. And I had to be able to be better with my kids and be better for my kids. And they notice it. They notice these things. They do.
Yeah.
And it affected my relationship with my husband too, because he started seeing a different person, giving off different energy. My energy became a higher frequency energy. It wasn't a negative energy because I started thinking differently. And it affected our relationship and the space around us. So yeah, I think you have to take accountability and you have to say, I want to communicate differently. And that's
Yeah.
that's it. Yeah.
This is so good. Well, I love it, Tammy. I think there's so many messages here. I think we could like go on forever about all of this because I think there's
I
so many
know.
great things here. But you're right, and I've always, as a coach, I work with a lot of entrepreneurs that are trying to really develop themselves, kind of like we're talking about here in the space, because it's not just about running your business, right? It's about being an effective leader, an effective communicator, because I really firmly believe how you do one thing is how you do all things. And so if you're relationally challenged here, you're probably relationally challenged in another area of your life. If you're lacking discipline in one area, you're probably lacking it somewhere else. And so I work with people, and this is one of the things we really talk about is learning how to communicate effectively and how to show up differently, because it really starts with you. And when you come to the relationship in a different energy, people respond differently to you. There may be some resistance for a while, but eventually they start responding differently to you because they're like, what is happening here? This is not the same person that I've been seeing, all this time. And so I think it always starts with us first. It's always about us continuing to evolve.
Did you ever notice that when you're trying to move forward or personally develop more or grow, that you'll have people who will push back
Oh yeah,
because they're
absolutely.
attracted to the other
Yeah,
energy, and you
yeah,
have to be able to let them go.
yeah.
You have to let them go because they're gonna hold on because they're used to that you, and that's what you attracted. That's what you attracted when
Mhm.
you put out that energy. You attract it, right? So when you're trying to go to a higher frequency or a higher elevation, there's going to be people who are going to resist it, and you know what? You might even find in your family people are going to resist it. They don't know how to relate to you
Yep.
anymore because you're different. They're used to a certain behavior. But yeah, if you keep moving forward, I think the people who are meant to go along will go along, and the people who are meant to drop off will drop off. And you shouldn't be afraid of that. And I think also we have to look at it, especially in business. I mean, I founded the Women Beyond the Table Business Network, and yeah, we have members who they pay a subscription to a membership to join, but there's a lot of women in the group that they want to see the group thrive, and it's about being a team, and it's about people buying in. Like, you have to have people who want to buy in. Like, when you communicate, they want to be part of that, and how they become part of that is by building trust, being authentic, and being honest. Like, I need help, I need this, can we do this together, what do you think? Like, it's about opening the not just the communication, but bringing people in and giving them, like you said, praise, and telling them, like, you respect their skill set because you don't have that skill set. You can own it. You don't have to be great at everything, and you can admire the people and give them the respect that do things better than you, and have them do it and have them buy into a vision. And it's just about how you present it. I never would have thought, if you would have told me in 2020, oh, Tammy, you're going to, expand your business. You're going to have a podcast. You're going to found a women's business network. Oh, you're going to write a book. I would have been like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? So it's never too late. It's never too late to do what you want. It's never too late to create. I believe we are designed and created by God to be limitless. It's just a matter of what's in your head. But it's
Yeah,
never too late. It's never too late to connect to your kids. It's never too late to connect to anybody. There's always opportunity, just
it's
if you
good.
want to take it or not.
It's good. Good stuff, Tammy. Well, if our audience wants to get in touch with you, maybe they want to find out what you're doing. They want to get a copy of this book, which I recommend. I'm excited about what you're doing. I think this is great. And it's going to help, I think, connect a lot of families together. So, but if they want to get in touch with you, where would you like us to send them?
Okay, so you can go to my website, which is www.C as in Tom, C as in cat, brand consulting, BRAND consulting.com. That's my business, is brand consultant, brand messaging consultant. So it's tcbrandconsulting.com. Text message to my son's has its own menu tab. It's on Amazon. So there's a link there to go right to Amazon and order and try it out. And I'm really interested in finding out what people think and if they love the book. And so far, the reviews have been really, really coming into me really, really nicely. So I'm very pleased with that.
Well, congratulations on this and continued success. And I'm going to connect with you so we can keep in touch. I definitely want to see what you're
I
doing and
hope
how
so.
things are moving along for you and stuff. And thank you for contributing on Starter Girls and inspiring our listeners to do great things and get those relationships, work on those relationships. Most important thing in all.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Relationships are everything. Where we need to have those. We're not islands unto ourselves. And as you saw during the pandemic, when people lost connection, it was very hard for a lot of people. Thank God for internet. It was very hard on
Absolutely.
people. And I believe, with depression and with all, you don't need necessarily drugs. You need to get people
You
more
need to get around
connected and
people.
give them purpose, and they'll feel a lot better. Yeah.
I agree with you. Well, thank you. We do want to say to our
Thank
listeners,
you.
of course, if you enjoy the show, head on over to Apple, give us a review there. You can check us out on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. And as I always say, you guys take care, be safe, be kind to one another, and we will see you next time.